Welcome to Bruce Hurwitz Presents Meet the Experts. I'm your host, Bruce Hurwitz of Hurwitz Strategic Staffing. You can find me on the web at hsstaffing.com. I hope you will consider us for all your staffing, career counseling, and speech writing needs. I'm delighted to be joined today by Rick DellaRatta. Our topic is the impact of concert series on solving international problems. Meet the Experts is sponsored by P&K CPAs. P&K is a full-service accounting firm. They provide accounting and consulting services to businesses ranging from startups to small and mid-cap firms to nonprofits as well as high-net-worth individuals. Contact them today for a free consultation at pk-cpas.com or call them at 973-882-8810. They will be happy to be of service. Rick, welcome to the show.
Hey, Bruce. Great to be here.
It's my pleasure. Please take a moment or two and introduce yourself to our viewers.
Okay. My name is Rick DellaRatta, as you probably already know from Bruce's introduction, but I'm a jazz artist, singer, pianist, composer, and in 2001, actually on the date of September 11th, 2001, I wrote a poem. The poem's called Jazz for Peace. And I've been trying to live up to the words of that poem ever since. And that has included being the founder of the organization Jazz for Peace, which has a benefit concert series that's helped over 850 of the world's most outstanding causes. It's also done numerous and sometimes countless amounts of educational programs and instrument donations for children all across the country and around the world. And I think today, Bruce, you want to specifically talk to me about the benefit concert series, which is probably the most extensive of what Jazz for Peace does.
Well, I did a little research, and you'll correct me if
Sure.
I made an error. But the first concert was one that was held at Shea Stadium, Concert for a Cause. Was the first held at Shea Stadium,
No.
in 1970, called the Festival for Peace.
Oh, okay. Actually, I'm not really an expert on that, so I'll have to agree with you on that historical reference. That's fascinating.
And I'm not going to waste time with the years, but you had a concert for Bangladesh, Live Aid, which was for famine.
Right.
Farm Aid, which was for U.S. farmers, Tibetan Freedom Concert, Tribute to Heroes, which was 9/11, also called a concert for New York, Tsunami Relief, Hurricane Relief, Hope for Haiti, Sandy Relief. So whenever there's a natural or human disaster, it seems that the entertainment world comes together, puts on a show.
I'm so glad you brought that up because you're right. Historically, I am certainly, I'm influenced by so many people from the past who have used the art form of music and culture and in many cases jazz to help outstanding causes and even individuals. There's the Harlem Rhett parties where, people would hold a jazz event in someone's apartment, charge admission, and use that money to pay the person's rent. And this used to happen month to month back in the days. I believe the 40s and 50s, etc. So yes, there is a huge historical precedent for what Jazz for Peace began shortly after the events of 9/11 and our concert at the United Nations, where we got enough notoriety to begin our benefit concert series.
So let's look at a slide that you prepared. What are we looking at here?
Okay, so, even we did not realize how much one thing can affect another thing and how many cross-healing possibilities are involved in, for example, our benefit concert series.
What is cross-healing?
Okay, so there are many ways that a profoundly positive impact can be given from a event for cause, a musical event for cause, okay? And in our instance, the first one that's listed on that is the music. And
Correct.
people say, why jazz for peace? Why, why not folk for peace? Well, the art form of jazz, for sure, has a huge history of having a profoundly positive effect on an individual. And the example that we list in that slide is a man named Charles Black, who was basically just attending an event in his hometown in Indiana and became mesmerized with the music and had become convinced at the end of that performance that the person playing the trumpet was absolutely a genius. That he happened to be looking at Louis Armstrong, and it ended up having a profoundly positive impact on him in the sense that he now had to evaluate a lot of things that he had thought, maybe because this person was black, he was inferior, he wasn't intelligent. Well, how could a genius be inferior? How could a genius not be intelligent? How could a genius not deserve the right to vote, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? He went on to be the one of the authors of Brown versus the Board of Education and many other landmark documents in our governmental history. He became a U.S. senator, and near the end of his life, he was asked, "How is it that you achieved so much in your life? When so many other people, just live regular old lives, ordinary, yet you have achieved so much." And he pointed to that day and the art form of jazz. And of course, that's one of so many examples in the history of jazz. And so the music can have just the music alone can have a profoundly positive effect on a person. Yesterday, when we spoke to prep for this, you had told me how you were affected so positively by a song called The Birth of the Blues, which Louis Armstrong had recorded, I believe. But the most famous recording, when the one you mentioned, was Sammy Davis Jr., right?
Correct.
So, I've never done this song before, but I was a piano bar entertainer where I had to learn songs on the fly and perform them that night for people. And so why don't I just play a little bit of Birth of the Blues right now, and you will hear the jazz. There's jazz in the singing and the way you phrase it and stuff like that. But in the little interlude I do, you'll hear an art form of jazz that's kind of an ocean that all jazz musicians draw from when they improvise, and hopefully at some point in their lives actually contribute themselves a few drops to that beautiful ocean of contribution.
Go for it.
Okay. They heard the breeze in the trees, singing weird melodies, and they made the start of the blues from a jail. Came of a downhearted frail, and they played that this part of the blues. From a whippoorwill and on a hill, they took a new note, the pushing through the horn till it was born into a new note. And then they nursed it and rehearsed it, and they gave out the news that the Southland people to me.
And Rick? Rick, Rick.
Was born into a blue note, and then they lost it and rehearsed it. Gave out the news that the Southland gave birth to the blues, and the Southland, the Southland, the Southland gave birth to the blues.
Rick, I cut you off for a few seconds because we have a limited amount of time. I was hoping to grab your attention.
Okay.
And I'd rather have the discussion, but I thank you for the musical interlude. The reason that I like the song isn't so much for the song, which is a great song. We never got into this. It is a recording on YouTube of the Rat Pack, which was Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., in this case, of all people, Johnny Carson. And they were doing a charity event. And the final song, which when they did it was hilarious, was Birth of the Blues.
Wow.
So that is the type of, and this would have probably have been in the late 50s, early 60s, because they were joking about sitting at the back of the bus and separate but equal. So that would have been the time frame. Probably there was some, I think there was some mention of Martin Luther King Jr., so maybe the mid-60s. But that was the time of the civil rights movement. And you also had two bands there. You had Count Basie, all of the performers of whom were black, and I'm forgetting Frank Sinatra's band. No, not Quincy Jones, not important. But that was a type of concert for a charity, for a specific charity. So music has been used to promote causes for decades, for generations. It's something that is done. And I think it's an American contribution to the world of activism.
Well, yes, and what I really like about this dialogue is that you're bringing up something equally as important, and that is the use of music to do good things for the world. And that is really the essence of what Jazz for Peace is about. Now, in addition to that, I'm bringing up the actual music itself because in my example of Charles Black, it was the actual playing. It wasn't a charity event he was at. It was actually a dance, and he was supposed to be looking around trying to pick up girls is what he was supposed to be doing. Instead, he became mesmerized on Louis Armstrong and left a profoundly positively changed man.
Well, that's the same thing as if he had gone to a lecture. Not knowing that the speaker was going to be an African American, and all of a sudden he walks in, he listens, and he says, "This guy's got a head on his shoulders. He's very intelligent. My prejudices are wrong."
Absolutely. Now, just before we leave music, I just want to give you one other example because during the same time period that you're talking about, okay, jazz was also being created that has had a profoundly positive effect on people's lives that sounds very, very different from that specific song that you loved from the charity event that you saw it at. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a couple seconds of this. But this is an example of John Coltrane, who lived also during the 60s. And this is the improvisation that is so important to so many people who play jazz and who really listen to the art form of jazz. Okay, so this is just a simple short melody called Giant Steps, and it goes. conversation. See what I mean? I know we have to make
one quick question, then we'll get back to the slide.
Okay.
What's the difference between jazz and blues?
Well, there's a similarity in that they both come from the same place, but the blues is a form, okay? And there's a 8-bar form, a 12-bar form, a 16-bar form of the blues. It's a form. And what jazz has done is extended on that form using all kinds of harmonic and improvisatory concepts and innovations. So in other words, a blues musician might stay inside the scale called the blues scale, whereas a jazz musician would extend that scale, would extend that to all other kinds of possibilities. You know, that is you know, a blues sound for you, for your ears, right? That's blues, okay? But a jazz person would now bring in other things, such as bebop, you know, which would sound like this. You see what I mean?
I got you.
And all kinds of other things, harmonic variations and extensions, and in other words, they're building a house out of that, out of that structure.
Let's go back, and I'll show it briefly just to remind our viewers. Let's do 2 and 3 together, because one says the recipient and those who benefit directly, and then the other one is those who benefit indirectly. So explain what you're talking about here, about direct and indirect beneficiaries of the mission, which I take it is the purpose of the concert.
Delighted to, and thank you for this opportunity. So in number 2, the example I'm using is a concert tour that we did all the way back in 2006 for an organization called the Zegan Fund. This organization, their mission is to provide funds for girls to go to school in rural areas where families do not send the children to school. For example, there are many rural areas in China. People know of only the big cities, but in the countryside, the women would go uneducated. In fact, over 130 million girls go without education because either the whole family doesn't go to higher education, or in many cases, the families will only send the sons to school, and they'll keep the girls, you know, at home and not send them. So what they would do is they would go to the family and actually tell them, listen, we will provide the funding for this girl to go to a higher education or go to school. And so here was a tour that we did where we thought, for obvious reasons, that we were helping young girls who otherwise couldn't afford it go to school. A profoundly positive effect on many young girls, okay? And the other possibility, as we'd already mentioned, was through these concerts, people who attend might have a wonderful effect from the music. We might be able to reach people with the music and also, excite them and also being a part of something that's for a good cause, and just those numerous reasons. But what we didn't realize, which was number 3 listed on that page, is that the girls not going to school actually contributes to the problems that we're having in our climate, due to the fact that educated girls, by statistics show, have half as many children. So in other words, girls who are uneducated having between 4 and 5 children, and girls who are educated choosing to have 2 children or less. And this, on a book that came out listing the 10 most important issues to deal with our climate crisis. Global warming, people call it now. They're starting to call it global devastation when we look at, the plastic islands in our ocean and the issues with our jet stream and all of the other problems that are being caused. Number 6 on that list, which unbeknownst to us at the time, was the education of young women. So here we were contributing to women being educated, and we're actually helping our planet without knowing it. And then number 7 on that list is family planning in general, which 130 million educated girls would have a huge impact with regards to family planning and their decisions with that. Number 6 and 7 combined, if you combine the two, would actually be the number 1 thing to address, and most important thing to address with regards to the issues of our climate. So this is an example where you think you're doing one thing and you don't even realizing you're also contributing to, in a great way, to another problem.
I'm going to leave the specifics of that alone because it's not the topic. Mm-hmm. But there is something that you brought up in that you went into a rural part of China.
The organization does.
The organization does.
Yeah.
To educate girls. Mm-hmm. And in the past, I have said this, the most important way to judge the quality of a country, the civilization, is to ask the question, do they educate their girls? I don't care if they give women the right to vote. I don't care if they allow women to run for political office. I don't care if they allow women to hold political office, because all of that can be taken away. But you can't uneducate someone.
Cannot reverse it.
They learn how to read and write and do math. They will always know how to read and write and do math. So for me, the key question is, do you teach your girls, your children? That said, you're going into a rural area where girls have never gone to school before. And there's a reason for that. There's a very logical reason for it. They were needed to stay at home to help with the farm. They needed to learn how to cook, clean, sew, mend in order to be good wives so that the family could marry them off. So by going in and convincing the parents that they should educate their daughters, you're going against definitely centuries, maybe millennia of tradition. Can you address that and how you convince people that it's time for a change?
Right. So another great point that you're bringing up. This is why Jazz for Peace, rather than us try to save the planet ourselves, we instead try to help those who are helping other, because this organization is dedicated and committing to this change that has to take place in certain areas where you cannot leave all of the girls uneducated anymore, where it's actually a detriment to the family and not a plus, but you have these norms that are, pulling the other direction. And this organization is the one that can analyze this, deal with the families, work together with them. They're the experts. So by us helping them, we're helping those who are helping others. And another point I want to bring up is that this is not the only instance. All of our events we found after, just digging a little deeper, they all have these kinds of cross-healing effects where even though we're there to affect one thing, it's that the fact that those people, that the improvement of that issue affects another thing. For example, an event we did at Pakistan where we were involved with an organization that was promoting literacy, okay? Turns out, statistically, that by teaching these children to read, their percentages of joining a terrorist group or getting involved in terror activity dramatically decreased. So here we were fighting terrorism. Instead of using guns and ships and trillions of dollars of money that is unaccounted for in our military, here we were just playing music and addressing in a profoundly positive way terrorism, just from the fact by these children learning how to read would dramatically lower the percentages of them being involved in terrorist organizations or terrorist activities due to the multitude of other options that they had in life.
Let's move on. Thank you for that. Let's move on. And again, I want to stay focused on our topic. You sent this slide. I've looked at it. I've read it. And I'm not sure what I'm looking at. So I'm just going to leave this one up and take us from the roots all the way up to the leaves.
Thank you. So most of what we talk about when we begin working with the organization is planting the roots, because the recipient organization helps us plant the roots of this empowerment tree. What we believe and what everyone has confirmed with us along the way that we've talked to is throwing money at a problem by itself does very little except enslave the people who are the recipients by making them dependent on it. So that's not the way to, that's not the philanthropic solution to our world's problems. However, bringing empowerment is, and money is only one of many aspects of that. So what we do is help the organization plant the roots so that Jazz for Peace can now grow their empowerment tree. And that's what you're looking at. You're looking at an empowerment tree. It starts out with the roots, where the organization helps us decide who will be the VIP guests of honor that will receive all kinds of perks and amenities, a VIP special hour for them to network and socialize, etc. And we work together on planting the roots of the tree. And once the roots are planted, now we can go on and get involved with local business sponsors, because having the community get involved with an outstanding cause not only helps them in the short run, but also can help them year in and year out as they continue to grow and achieve their mission. Okay. Number 3, organizations are way under-publicized, okay? And
I missed number 2.
Yes. Number 2 is local business sponsors, which I just mentioned.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Now we're on to number 3. I could spend more time on it, but I know we are time constrained.
No, my bad.
Okay. Number 3, Bruce, creating publicity and awareness. Outstanding causes are woefully under-publicized, and the simple reason is very simple. The networks, and there's only 6 of them now because of, I guess, some law that was passed in 1996, which enabled created this kind of monopolizing situation in the media. There's only 6 of them. They're owned by multi-billion-dollar corporations who want to increase their profits. And so, you know, it's not profitable for CNN and all that to spend all their time promoting outstanding causes, unfortunately. So outstanding causes need publicity and awareness. And a world-class cultural event brings that. Throwing money at the organization brings nothing. Nobody writes an articles and posters and publicity about a donation that was given. But an event, a world-class cultural event taking place in a town, and many times it's the only event in that town that evening, and sometimes even for months, creates publicity and awareness all in their communities, but sometimes nationwide and sometimes even internationally, we've found. So that's number 3.
Oh, hang on a second.
Mm-hmm.
This one I'm going to stop yet. I let you get away with a lot before. I'm not going to let you get away with this one.
Okay.
With social media the way it is today,
mm-hmm.
any little article can go viral. It happened to me. I wound up on Fox Business Network. I was thrilled. I had no idea that it was happening until all of a sudden the phone started ringing, and I'm getting calls from, what's it called, Good Morning America, and Headline News, and then ultimately Fox. So you've got the ability through social media to reach a national, international audience, but locally, you've got all these local papers that are given out at the convenience stores.
Well,
You've got your local newspapers.
Yes.
I used to work in the Bronx, and there were 4 local papers, and we were in there in all of them every single week.
Well, that's why I told you to ask me the tough questions, and I'm so glad you're doing that.
And of course, let's not forget the local television stations.
Right.
Here in Jersey, and I think also in New York, and all through greater New York, it's Channel 12.
Right.
Local, or you have New York 1.
Right.
You can get on television.
Yes. So absolutely. And that plays into our advantage because not only do we have social media to publicize this event, okay, but we also have the local networks, the local news, all the things that you mentioned. However, Bruce, if you click on, this is an interactive tree. So when you click on number 3, you don't see a local thing. You actually see Jazz for Peace on NBC television because we have been able to get the major media and the major outlets to pay attention to Jazz for Peace from time to time when we have an event that is particularly of interest to them in their markets. So publicity and awareness, and when you click on that, you'll see the only time that organization was ever on NBC was for an event like this because there's tons of organizations just doing their wonderful things that they do. But when you have an event like this, now you can bring the event and their good work together and reach the media in ways that they couldn't have before. And that's why we have branch number 3, creating publicity and awareness, opportunities that they normally would not get on their own.
And just so you and our viewers know, if I click on it, it's a PowerPoint, we'll just go to the next slide.
Right.
So that's why I'm not doing it.
You would have to go to the actual page on the web, which by the way, jazzforpeace.org/tree, TREE. It's that simple. So you go to our website, put a /tree, you will be at an interactive presentation of this where you can actually click on number 3 and see the interview on NBC television.
So now talk to us about local and major corporate sponsors.
Right. So at this point, and not before, which so many organizations say, why don't you go straight to Coca-Cola? No, Bruce, don't do that. Because you're not helping Coca-Cola. You're asking Coca-Cola to help you if you just show up at their doorstep and say, I want to put on this event. What we do at this point is now we've got the roots planted. Now we've got the community interest. Now we've got publicity and awareness. We're actually helping Coca-Cola by approaching them at this point in the stage. So now we have a much better chance at getting local and major corporate sponsors, and you can click on that to see events where there are actual, not only local contracts, but major corporate sponsors have also been involved. So you can click on number 4 when you go to that link and see it for your own eyes, okay? That brings us to number 5, prestigious and celebrity supporters. Now, with all this involved, once again, a celebrity, there's a lot of celebrities that want to do more besides just be a celebrity. They want to stand up for an outstanding cause, but there's a million of them out there, and they're all in the same boat. Well, you're not in the same boat at this point. You have an event with Jazz for Peace, you have the community involved, you have publicity and awareness, and you also hopefully have garnered the attention of local and major corporate sponsors. So a celebrity getting involved with you is actually going to be a wonderful experience for them, and not just for celebrities, but for prestigious people. I mean, presidents, prime ministers, all kinds of people that you and I know. And the very first time we found out about branch number 5 was because we were doing this, just bouncing around New York City, and we got a letter from Michael Bloomberg, the mayor of New York City. And he wanted that letter read at one of our events because he wanted the public to know how important this work was that we were doing, and how much he supported it, and how much he supported helping outstanding causes. So when we saw, wow, Michael Bloomberg, he doesn't have to take time out of his day to do this, I wonder if other people would. And many famous actors, politicians, senators, congressmen have taken time out of their day to stand up for an outstanding cause via one of our Jazz for Peace events, especially when it was in their jurisdiction, such as, in Indiana, in Chicago, when Barack Obama came out for one of our events, and et cetera, et cetera. In Kenya, where the Prime Minister, also supported that event.
Just so our viewers who are involved with nonprofits, just for their edification, I was a fundraiser for about 10 years, and I can't tell you how many events I did. Every politician has someone in their office who writes letters and declarations, and mayors, senators, representatives, state, federal, county officials are more than happy to issue proclamations and declarations. And the funniest one I ever received, well, it wasn't funny, it was the way it was presented at the event. The gentleman got up and he was holding this framed plaque, and he said, "It's got 8 whereases on it. How many of you want to hear it?" Nobody put up their hand. He smiled and he said, "On behalf of whoever it was, the mayor, the borough president, we want to commend you for your good works. Thank you very much." He got a standing ovation because everybody else was just reading what the letter or proclamation said. So if you just write, give them plenty of time. If you write to them, they're happy to provide those types of letters and declarations. But we're running out of time, so take us to branch 6.
Right. And I just want to say quickly, you'd be shocked, Bruce, at how many nonprofits don't know this and have never had an event like this where we could then reach those people. And, for example, we did an event in Africa where the Prime Minister of Kenya, Africa, came out in huge support of this event, to everyone's shock. Well, when we had it the next time we were in Kenya, the organization said, "Wow, we've got the roots planted. Go to the Prime Minister." No. Let's get the local businesses involved. Let's get publicity and awareness. Let's get the local and major corporate sponsors, and then go to him like we did the last time. Then he'll be so much more interested in coming out in support, knowing that we have our ducks in a row as well. And he's not just supporting any old, flimsy sort of arrangement. Now,
Excellent
number
point.
6 is where the money comes in. Number 6 is raise all you can buyout. It says on there. But what we mean by that is there are many, many fundraising techniques that we've learned along the way. Why? Because we've worked with the Red Cross. We've worked with UNICEF. We've worked with Habitat for Humanity. We've worked with Special Olympics. We've partnered with all the great nonprofits through our 850-plus event journey. And we have learned so much from those who knew so much more than us. And now we can use some of these techniques to see which ones would work for this specific event that's coming up. Every event is unique, and putting all of these techniques together in a combination of sorts, we can figure out a way to indeed raise the most money given the specifics of that situation, which leads us to number 7, and that is the sum of all these parts. The sum of all of this is to make an outstanding cause more publicized, which we hope they are more publicized at the end of this Jazz for Peace event, better funded, more prestigious, and all of those things on the tree, more sponsored than they were previously. And that is the helpful step forward that Jazz for Peace provides.
Wow. This has been the first musical podcast I've ever done. I thank you. You've provided good insight for nonprofits on maybe an indirect, as you were saying before, an indirect benefit of how to organize a successful fundraiser. So I thank you very much for coming on. And please feel free to share. I'm going to put up a slide, but feel free to share any additional contact information with our viewers that you want.
Okay, sure.
Is
Yeah,
there?
I mean, that kind of says it all. You know, you have our email address where you can write to us. You can always call. But I will share our website, and that is jazzforpeace.org if you're in the .org world. We also have jazzforpeace.wordpress.com, and that's, you know, a .com address that also has extraordinarily valuable information that we will refer with you, like we're doing on the podcast, where you can read it, but we can also speak to you at the same time. And I encourage people to work with our grant administration, because they are more than happy to share their knowledge and also be thorough and make sure that you understand it, that it's easy to understand, and that you also have a good time in the process. Have fun making a difference.
And I've had fun today, and I hope that our viewers have as well, and that they've also learned a thing or two. So thank you very much for coming on.
My pleasure, Bruce. Anytime.
And as always, thank you for watching, and please keep focused on success.